It is Makeover Weekend Drag Race España, a challenge that typically gives me the ick because it is terribly judged. It is horribly inconsistent. This season, they got it right. Hi, hello everyone. My name is Jer, and I saw you across the bar, and I wanted to know if you wanted a White Claw. We are in the semi-final episode, and I am so gagged that it's almost over. I want to go out on a limb right now and say I think that Drag Race España Season 5 might be one of my top favorite seasons of all time. It is up there in the pantheon with UK 2, Thailand 2, Drag Race Season 3. This season has presented such a high caliber of queens and a very difficult bar to surpass for the next group. I've enjoyed this cast, I've enjoyed the runways they've brought, I've enjoyed the way that production has navigated each one of the challenges and the runway themes, the way that the judges have critiqued the show has all been harmonious and smooth, and I'm very sad that it's almost done. The girls walk in this week chanting that they work 6 days a week! I love it. I kind of feel like Alexandra could have been here this week, had maybe she not had so many bottom placements in the earlier part of the season. Alexandra may have brought something super interesting and conceptual this week, and I'm curious how the timeline would have adjusted and changed if she was still here. The mini challenge this week is replaced by videos from home. They each get a small message from a family member, either a mom, a sister, or in Satine's case, her sister who's not blood, but is her sister. And I very much resonated with that storyline. To quote RuPaul, as queer people, we get to choose our families. We get to choose who we keep close to us and who we allow into our lives. And for someone like Satine, who doesn't have family, she has her chosen group of people that she surrounds herself with. It was really inspiring to see their relationship play out as this episode went on. Also, high levels of uncanny valley that they looked identical, but were not blood related. If you put them next to each other and sent them down the street, you'd think they were sisters or cousins or some type of blood relation. They had the same facial structure, the same kind of way of carrying themselves. And this whole segment made me very happy because it makes me realize that the world is on a good trajectory. That no matter how many times it feels like the conservative alt-right are winning across the globe and are slowly trying to suppress and silence our rights, even though that is happening, in tandem is this beautiful growth and transformation in society of people who are realizing that a lot of that toxic spirituality and religion that shaped and formed their worldview might not be what is correct, and there are other ways to explore living your life and accepting those around you. Seeing more of these international seasons where these family members are entrenched in the lives of their drag children, have accepted who they are as queer people, and want to go on TV to not only express their love, but also to partake in their art form. That is a really spectacular journey that we are so blessed to be able to see in this timeline. And I think it helps a lot of us heal in realizing that the world is on a good trajectory. There's just a very loud minority that's winning, but there are more people who are progressive in this world, and we just gotta get them to use their voice in the same way that these loud, annoying, wrong people always do that are trying to take away our rights and our freedom to exist as queer people. So in a lot of ways, this episode gave me light and hope in a way that I feel a lot of us really need at this time right now. So for this makeover challenge, they did a little twist. So not only did they have to present family resemblance, which is very difficult to lock down in the eyes of a judge, because what is family resemblance? Some seasons really go back and forth on if it's about the costuming or the makeup or the hairstyle to the performance to just the energy that they brought there. So this challenge, being super inconsistently judged across the franchises, made me a little nervous because I didn't know how it was gonna go. And then they tacked on the twist where they have to also pay homage to their hometowns and create a sash in honor of whatever that story is. I just finished watching the Makeover Challenge in Season 3 of España, where they had to construct their own looks. And I always turn up to when the girls have to make their own costumes for these challenges. I think it adds a little extra specialness to the makeover, and a makeover is meant to be a transformation, a full body experience, leaving who you were before and embracing this artistic version of yourself. And I think even though the sash is very small and isn't going to be that groundbreaking or impactful, I do feel like it reached a little bit of those levels that I want to see from the makeover, where they have to think outside of the box and outside of what they've already prepared. There were a lot of beautiful stories that got shared this week, but one that stood out to me and I connected with very heavily and wanted to comment on was this beautiful relationship between Nyx and her mom. There's a discussion brought up about Nyx's transition and her mom trying to, one, understand where Nyx was coming from and wanting to support her, but also kind of grieving the loss of her child and embracing that she was getting a new child. And I think that's an experience that a lot of parents of trans kids go through. It is a lot to go through, I'm sure, as a parent. And I loved seeing Nyx's empathy and understanding where her mom was coming from and not judging her at all for any feelings of grief or sadness that she felt through that process, because it is a reciprocal experience of the parent having to understand and embrace their kid, but it's also about the kid understanding and embracing their parent and the journey that goes through that too. Both parties are going through their own individual transitions. One is mental and one is physical and mental. And so this story was really beautiful to watch. And again, it just makes me appreciate that the world is healing in a way. So let's talk about these runway looks. I feel like this runway of all of them didn't have as much of that brand stamp as I normally look for in makeover challenges. This was a lot more about vibes, about performance, about love and connection, and I felt that come through the screen from the moment the first runway came out. Nyx and Sunix are first. Great wordplay on Nyx's mom's name. This peach brocade was gorgina. This was meant to be a majorette festival experience that Nyx was helping her mother fully realize as something that she wasn't able to do in this grandiosity many years ago. And I love the specialness of this fantasy that Nyx was giving to her mom. It was generous, it was kind, it was sweet, and you can tell how much they care and love each other. I love that Sunix had this grand, opulent dress, very much reading to me like the mom who was going out to the festival and dressing up to the tens, and then dragged along their kid and dressed them up kind of similar to them to complement the outfit, but the kid didn't want to be there. They just kind of wanted to have fun, and the mom kind of has to reel her back in. It was a very fun story from both of them, and I liked their performances. Nyx's mom is a firecracker and had so much personality, and the two of them shone in this challenge. I thought the hat choices were such a small detail that sold the story even more, with Nyx's mom having this kind of grander headpiece and then Nyx having this small day hat, very much giving me the idea of someone who's older and a youth. And overall, I felt that this embodied the spirit of the makeover challenge, which is to transform your partner into something brand new while also giving them elements of yourself. Margarita and Calveina Califata were next. This is meant to be a May festival look. I thought it was campy holding the drinks. I loved the floral motif. The textile choices were really smart. I love that one print was darker and one print was lighter. There was a lot of applique on these dresses. There were subtle sequins that caught the light. I'm a sucker for fringe, and I think the color choices were interesting for a makeover. And I thought were pleasing on these dresses. It very much had the vibe of something that Margarita would wear normally. There is a but though. I did not love the cut of these dresses. I thought they were kind of unflattering. They were a little big. They were not fitted, and that's not necessarily something I'm always looking from Margarita. It just did not have a refinement that I kind of hoped to see from a makeover. And the presentation to me was just sort of two girls out enjoying a cocktail at the daytime, maybe gonna play bridge later, I don't know. It was all a little simple, especially after Nyx raised the bar so high in that first look, and then everyone else was really spectacular. Margarita was sort of a victim of not punching up her performance enough, because she may have been able to be safe had they done something. Daphne and Persephone Mugler are next. This is a First Communions festival look, and this whole performance had deeply important memories for Daphne. She talked about her childhood and getting to wear this communion dress and feeling free and accepted by her family, and from that point forward, just being able to experience life and thrive and fly. I think the story of this was beautiful. I think the love letter to her mother was beautiful. I could tell that it was special to both of them, but the walking was so stiff and the voiceover was so joyous, but the performance was oddly restrained. I think that Daphne's reinterpretation of a communion dress was draggy, it was couture, it was high fashion. I loved the little elements of sparkle. I loved the way that it was cut and redesigned. It very much looked like a drag version of this costume. But then you scroll over and her sister is in like a hairdresser smock. Her sister was a little bit in the dust, I fear, and I don't think that was malicious in any way. She was trying to go for a look that her mother would have worn, like a fantasy that she had of what her mother could have worn at that time, a hairstyle that her mother could have had. But Big Javi really nailed it on the head, and I wrote this down in my notes too. It just needed to be more spectacular for this late in the game. It lacked boldness. It could have been draggier. It could have been more of a fantasy in a drag sphere rather than something that would be realistic, that could walk anywhere in the world. And to me, it lacked a lot of that eye for detail that we normally see from Daphne's looks. Especially after last week, where she wore such a basic corset and ballet skirt with that swan on it, but then transformed it into an entire story on the runway. She has the ability to turn something kind of drab into something fabulous. And we didn't see that this week. Satine and Raso Greco are next. These are traditional Madrid outfits, and I thought they looked gorgeous. They look impossibly similar for not being blood at all. They need to do a 23andMe or something. I love these gray ginghams. I love the choice of Satine being in the darker and her makeover being in the lighter version of it. The pink half of Raso's bodice was beautiful. I think that may have been the part that Satine had to cut up in order to make it fit her body so that it wasn't couture custom made specifically for Satine. And to me, it very much had that touch of we're family by love of each other, but not necessarily by blood. So the costumes are not gonna be identical. They're not precisely the same, but they're close enough. And I thought that was really special and showed how much their relationship means to Satine. Laca Udia and Laco Yares are next. This is a 50s style tribute to Fallas Flower Girls. And holy smokes. The fact that she painted a mustache on her mom and that her mom was willing to commit to that for this runway, so good. Caldia looked striking and elegant in this baby doll silhouette. That crown was insanely elegant. And then Laco, having a very similar shape but completely different textiles, gave me a massive fashion bone. I love those white textured tights that Caldia chose for her look. Paired with that dress and that long brown hair was just a perfect combination, especially on such a muted color choice like this kind of beige pink. And then those pops of color on Caldia's being red and her mom having golds. So good! Both dresses were couture, they were elegant, the presentation was special, and you could feel what their story was and how proud of Caldia her mom is. This week, Caldia and Nyx, I think, impressed the judges immensely and stamped that they're solid contenders to win this crown. Because up until now, I've really only felt like it was going to be Satine's crown and that maybe Margarita had a chance to win, but I have been silently rooting for Caldia this whole time and really loudly rooting for Nyx. Like, I want all of them to win, give us a four-way crowning because they all deserve it. And I'm glad to see that the judges are seeing the power that is both of these performers. Caldia is called as the winner. I agreed. It was a powerful performance. They were great looks. It was very well deserved. And Margarita and Daphne have to lip sync to get to the finale. The lip sync song is Quédate Conmigo. This was an extremely emotional ballad, and I think a great moment for both of them. The first lip sync we got to see Margarita lip sync in was a ballad, and then we get to see that Daphne is more than just a powerful dancer, that she can also emote, which is why I said last week that I think she could have lip sync more. She has the potential and possibility of banging out these lip syncs, and they didn't utilize her as an assassin more often, and I think they probably could have. This was an extremely tight battle because they were both giving exactly what the song called for. They were presenting the right amount of restrained emotion, they were moving in compelling ways, and what I've come to expect from younger performers is that when a note tends to run for a bit, you'll see the performer shake their head violently to try to shake the note out of their mouth. That's what it's supposed to look like. And I'm so glad that we did not see Daphne do that. And I think it was impressive to see Daphne be able to keep up with Margarita, who thrives in this style of lip syncing. Margarita is called as being a finalist, meaning that Daphne is sadly out here, but I do think it was her time. I think there was no reason why Margarita should have gone home. She has a great track record. She's been doing solidly in the competition, and her stumbles, I feel like the one in the ball I get it. That was definitely deserved. But then this spot, it was sort of just, well, someone had to be bottom too. And I've got to say, this is probably my favorite top 4 of all time. I love all 4 of them so much. And I know I say that almost every season, like, oh, I love this top 4, but there's usually one that I'm just trying to not say that I don't think that they deserve to be there. Because that's not my place to ever say that someone doesn't deserve a spot. Except for Spicy Sunshine. She did not deserve top 4. Ugh, that should have been Nane's spot. I'm making myself mad. And each one of them have their own reasons why they should win. Satine is mother and has been performing at an extremely high caliber all season from the jump. Margarita has presented camp and couture with elegance and comedy. Nyx is that perfect archetype of the underdog character, that person who is struggling a little bit with their aesthetics but is personality tens. And Lakaudia presenting confidence in this slightly off skew style of drag, but still draws inspiration from a lot of the typical tropes that we see from glamorous drag queens. Chaldea is mixing gender and presenting that in a really incredible and magnificent way each episode. There's reasons why they should all win. They're all phenomenally talented, which is why I say quad crown, please. Give them one crown that they can split up like Katie Heron and each one gets a piece. But who do you want to win? I want Satine to win, but I want Margarita to win, but I want Chaldea to win, but I want Nyx to win. So I'm gonna be devastated no matter who wins because the other 3 lost. But in my opinion, all of them are all-stars ready. Can't wait to see what happens in a couple of weeks. I will not be covering the reunion because it's just not enough content for me to talk about, but maybe I'll do something for next week's time slot that's a little bit different. Join me in 2 weeks where we will talk about the finale, and if you are interested in Canada's Drag Race or in Dragula, I will be covering those this week, so keep an eye out for those. Thank you for watching, and I will see y'all on the flip.